And I said, that was amazing. And he said, so what do you think about it? And I said, I want to make movies. And he was like, great.
What obsesses a perfectionist who shoots scenes 99 times? David Fincher operates like a forensic scientist, dissecting every frame until it reveals its secrets. Behind those pristine compositions and meticulously calculated camera moves lies something more unsettling than technical mastery. It's control. Complete, absolute control over how you see, what you feel, when you breathe.
And I'd seen it before I saw the movie. Illuminated for me that movies didn't happen in real time.
Fincher doesn't stumble onto great shots. He engineers them. 6 films became his laboratory for understanding how cinema could manipulate consciousness itself. These weren't casual viewings or artistic inspiration. They were case studies in psychological warfare, blueprints for turning audiences into unwilling accomplices. From Scorsese's urban paranoia to Hitchcock's voyeuristic mechanics, from conspiracy thrillers to surveillance nightmares, Fincher absorbed techniques that most directors use for entertainment and weaponized them for something deeper. These masters showed him that the most powerful films don't just tell stories, they rewire how you process reality. Fincher learned that perfection isn't about beauty, it's about precision. Every element serving a calculated purpose, every decision designed to burrow into your subconscious and plant ideas that feel like your own discoveries. These 6 directors became his professors in the dark arts of cinematic manipulation. Here are the films that taught David Fincher how to turn moviegoing into psychological surgery and why his obsession with control produces the most disturbing comfort you'll ever experience. 6. Vertigo, 1958. Hitchcock didn't make a thriller. He built a machine for manufacturing desires. When Fincher discovered Vertigo, he encountered something that would define his understanding of cinema's most dangerous power: the ability to make audiences fall in love with their own manipulation. Scotty Ferguson's obsession with recreating the perfect woman became Fincher's template for how directors could reshape reality through pure technical craft.
But I love movies like that. I think movies should inflict themselves on the audience.
The film's spiral motif, repeated in hairstyles, stairwells, and camera movements, taught Fincher that visual obsession could become literal hypnosis. Hitchcock's use of the dolly zoom during Scotty's vertigo attacks showed Fincher how camera technique could make psychological states physically visible. The world literally warps around a character's mental breakdown. Kim Novak's dual performance as Madeline and Judy, the same actress playing different versions of herself, became Fincher's masterclass in controlled artifice. How makeup, lighting, and costume could create completely different personalities from identical raw material. The film's color palette, those sickly greens and passionate reds, demonstrated how environmental psychology could manipulate emotional responses without audiences realizing it. Vertigo's narrative structure, telling the same story twice from different perspectives, influenced every Fincher film that reveals information strategically rather than chronologically. The second half's devastating revelation that Scotty has been manipulated all along taught Fincher that the cruelest plot twists make audiences complicit in protagonists' moral failures. Hitchcock showed Fincher that cinema's ultimate achievement isn't telling great stories. It's making people grateful for being deceived with such exquisite precision. 5. Rear Window, 1954. Hitchcock turned watching into participating. When Fincher encountered Rear Window, he discovered the blueprint for audience complicity.
Movies are a commodity now, much more so than they were back then. The time those movies are made, Kinney shoes.
L.B. Jeffries, confined to his apartment with a broken leg, becomes obsessed with observing his neighbors through telephoto lenses. Fincher recognized something profound in that setup. Every moviegoer is essentially Jeff, sitting motionless in darkness, watching other people's private moments unfold. The film's single location constraint, never leaving Jeff's apartment, taught Fincher that limitation breeds innovation. Hitchcock's camera becomes Jeff's eyes, his curiosity, his growing paranoia. When Jeff suspects his neighbor of murder, audiences find themselves hoping for violence they can witness safely. Fincher absorbed that moral complexity completely. Grace Kelly's Lisa, initially dismissed by Jeff as too perfect for his gritty photographer lifestyle, gradually reveals her own appetite for dangerous observation. Her transformation from elegant socialite to enthusiastic accomplice showed Fincher how characters could evolve through shared transgression. The film's most suspenseful sequence has Lisa breaking into the suspected murderer's apartment, while Jeff watches helplessly from his window. Hitchcock's technical precision, using practical effects and perfect timing, rather than cheap tricks, became Fincher's standard for creating genuine tension. The film's sound design, where overheard conversations and ambient noise build psychological pressure, influenced every Fincher project that uses environmental audio to create unease. Rear Window taught Fincher that the most effective cinema makes audiences accomplices rather than observers, transforming passive viewing into active moral participation without ever announcing the transformation. 4. The Conversation, 1974. Coppola made paranoia into poetry. When Fincher discovered The Conversation, he found his obsession with technology's dark potential fully realized. Harry Call, a professional surveillance expert who records conversations for clients while remaining emotionally isolated from human connection, became Fincher's archetype for characters whose technical mastery destroys their personal lives.
It's the first time it ever occurred to me that there was this incredible circus and all of this time and thought.
Gene Hackman's performance, all twitchy anxiety and Catholic guilt, taught Fincher how professional competence could coexist with psychological fragmentation. Call's expertise in recording equipment makes him valuable to dangerous people, but his growing awareness of how his work enables violence gradually consumes his peace of mind. The film's central mystery, whether recorded conversations mean what they seem to mean, became Fincher's template for unreliable information. Coppola's sound design, where audio quality becomes a character in itself, influenced every Fincher project dealing with technology and truth. The film's famous sequence where Call repeatedly plays back a recorded conversation, hearing different meanings each time depending on which words receive emphasis, showed Fincher how technical precision could create rather than resolve ambiguity. The film's climax, where Call discovers his apartment has been bugged by unknown enemies, taught Fincher that expertise provides no protection against the systems it serves. The final image of Call tearing apart his own home, searching for listening devices that may not exist, became Fincher's understanding of how surveillance culture breeds self-destruction. The Conversation proved to Fincher that technology amplifies human weakness rather than correcting it, and that professional paranoia eventually becomes personal reality. 3. Chinatown, 1974. Polanski peeled back Los Angeles to reveal its rotting foundation. When Fincher discovered Chinatown, he encountered the perfect fusion of personal investigation and systemic evil.
Adaptation of a mass culture phenomenon, so, it better work on the movie side.
Jake Geddes, thinking he's handling a simple adultery case, uncovers a conspiracy involving water rights, incest, and political corruption that reaches back generations. Fincher learned that the most devastating stories make protagonists complicit in the very systems they're trying to expose. Robert Towne's labyrinthine script taught Fincher how to structure mysteries where each answer generates 3 new questions. Gita's follows clues methodically, believing detective work leads to justice, but every revelation draws him deeper into moral quicksand. The film's famous third act, where Gittas realizes he's been manipulated from the beginning, became Fincher's template for protagonists who discover their pawns in larger games. Faye Dunaway's Evelyn Mulray, simultaneously victim and accomplice in her father's crimes, showed Fincher how characters could embody moral complexity without losing audience sympathy. Her final confession, delivered through tears and terror, demonstrated how personal trauma could be weaponized by political power structures. John Huston's Noah Cross, the film's embodiment of patriarchal evil, taught Fincher that the most frightening villains operate through legitimate institutions rather than criminal organizations. Cross controls water, law enforcement, and family relationships with equal casual brutality. The film's devastating final line, "Forget it, Jake, it's Chinatown," became Fincher's understanding that some corruption runs too deep for individual action to meaningfully challenge. Sometimes the system wins because it was designed to win. 2. All the President's Men, 1976 Pakula, turned journalism into archaeology. When Fincher discovered All the President's Men, he found his obsession with investigative processes given cinematic form.
Everybody wanted to be a director, everybody wanted to be an actor, and I was kind of like, I really want to be a good grip.
Woodward and Bernstein, starting with a simple burglary, methodically uncover a conspiracy that reaches the highest levels of government. Fincher absorbed how patient research could generate more suspense than any chase sequence. The film's newsroom sequences, showing reporters making phone calls and cross-referencing documents, taught Fincher that mundane activities could become thrilling when lives depend on their outcome. Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman's performances, emphasizing journalistic technique over personal charisma, demonstrated how professional competence could carry dramatic weight. Pakula's visual design, using fluorescent lighting in cramped office spaces, created an atmosphere where paranoia felt justified rather than pathological. The famous parking garage meetings with Deep Throat showed Fincher how environmental tension could amplify dialogue without overwhelming it. Every shadow suggested surveillance, every echo implied danger. The film's structure, following investigation chronology rather than traditional dramatic beats, influenced every Fincher project that prioritizes process over spectacle. How evidence accumulates, how sources develop, how institutional resistance hardens as investigators get closer to uncomfortable truths. Gordon Willis's cinematography, using practical darkness and natural lighting, taught Fincher that authentic environments create more believable tension than artificial atmospheres. The film's restraint, never overselling its historical importance, showed Fincher how understatement could amplify rather than diminish dramatic impact. All the President's Men proved to Fincher that the most explosive revelations emerged through methodical accumulation of seemingly insignificant details. 1. Taxi Driver, 1976. Scorsese didn't create a character. He performed an autopsy on American loneliness. When Fincher first encountered Taxi Driver, he witnessed something that would fundamentally reshape his understanding of unreliable narrators.
What you're looking for, but we'd love to have you, and it's very odd. And he said, odd? It sounds great, send it.
Travis Bickle, driving through New York's neon-lit decay while his mental state deteriorates, became Fincher's template for protagonists whose perception of reality can't be trusted. De Niro's performance, combining method preparation with psychological authenticity, taught Fincher how character transformation could happen gradually without losing credibility. Travis's journey from isolated cab driver to potential assassin unfolds through small behavioral changes rather than dramatic personality shifts. His famous mirror monologue, "You talkin' to me?" demonstrated how self-delusion could become self-destruction. Michael Ballhaus's cinematography, using slow motion and subjective camera angles, showed Fincher how visual technique could represent disturbed consciousness. The film's voyeuristic perspective, following Travis as he observes the city's nighttime inhabitants, made audiences complicit in his growing detachment from human connection. Paul Schrader's script, treating urban alienation as psychological disease, influenced every Fincher character who becomes dangerous through isolation rather than inherent evil. Travis's vigilante fantasy, where he imagines himself as society's cleanser, prefigures every Fincher protagonist whose noble intentions mask destructive impulses. The film's ambiguous ending, where Travis might be dead or might be continuing his descent into madness, taught Fincher that the most unsettling stories refuse definitive resolution. Taxi Driver showed Fincher that the most terrifying narratives happen inside broken minds that still function well enough to appear normal. Fincher absorbed these masters' lessons in psychological precision. 6 directors taught him that cinema's deadliest weapon isn't violence or spectacle, it's control. Every frame calculated, every cut surgical, every sequence designed to infiltrate consciousness and plant ideas that feel like personal revelations.